At first light, when the desert sky still glowed the color of dying embers, Elijah Crow stepped off his horse and stared at the cabin he'd just bought for 12 cents, a joke of a price that now sat heavy on his conscience like an omen. The old prospector who sold it to him had only muttered one warning before disappearing into the dunes: "Ain't empty. Ain't quiet. And it sure as hell ain't yours alone." Elijah had laughed it off then. But as he approached the lonely cabin crouched beneath the Arizona cliffs, a cold wind scraped across his neck, and the boards creaked as though something inside shifted its weight. He pushed the door open, and the breath died in his chest. Hanging from the rafters, tall enough that her hair brushed the dusty floor, was the body of an enormous Apache girl, no older than 16, her skin still warm, as if death had reached her only moments earlier. Her feet were bare, her wrists bruised, her expression frozen halfway between fear and defiance. Elijah staggered back, heart hammering, the copper taste of guilt filling his throat. He hadn't just bought a cursed cabin. He had walked directly into someone's nightmare. Elijah Crow wasn't a man accustomed to fear. He'd been raised on a ranch with hunger on one side of him and storms on the other. He'd buried his parents before he learned how to shave and fought in border skirmishes before he learned how to dance. But nothing, had ever made his knees buckle like the sight of that girl. He lowered her tremblingly, hands shaking as he cut the rope and laid her on a faded blanket. To his shock, her chest rose, shallow, ragged, but undeniably alive. Someone had tried to kill her, but the attempt had failed. And now the responsibility for her life lay in his hands. Before Elijah could process what to do next, a low groan rolled across the canyon, followed by distant hoofbeats. Men, many of them, the kind of men who didn't believe in witnesses. He lifted the girl into his arms, light as a memory despite her unusual height, and carried her to his horse. "You hold on," he whispered as he rode hard into the open desert. "You hold on, and I'll get you home." He didn't know if she could hear him. He didn't know who she was, or why someone had wanted her dead. But he knew one thing: whoever did this was coming back. Hours later, Elijah pulled into the high ridges of Apache territory, praying he wasn't riding into a death sentence of his own. The tribe had every reason to hate ranchers like him, white settlers who carved fences into land that wasn't theirs. But he wasn't bringing trouble, he was bringing a daughter back from the brink of death. Before he even dismounted, arrows lined up across the surrounding cliffs, aimed directly at him. A tall man stepped forward, his face carved with grief. His eyes dropped to the unconscious girl in Elijah's arms, and a sound escaped him, half sob, half curse. "Elon," the man cried, rushing toward her. "My child, my brave giant moon child." Elijah realized then that the girl's unusual height wasn't abnormal to her people. It was a mark of heritage. She was from a nearly extinct clan known for producing towering, powerful warriors. He handed her over gently. "Found her hanging in a cabin I just bought," Elijah said hoarsely. "Didn't know what I was walking into." The chief's gaze hardened. "Men from the Galloway Mining Company took her. They came for our land, for the metal beneath our sacred cliffs. She refused to show them where the silver vein runs. They tried to break her spirit." His jaw clenched. "They tried to take her voice. But she would not speak." Elijah felt a surge of respect and fury. The mining company had been trying to buy up land all over the territory, using violence where money failed. If they had targeted this girl simply for standing up to them, they would surely come after her tribe next. "I'll help you," Elijah said firmly. "I'll stand with you against them." The chief studied him for a long, tense moment before giving a slow, deliberate nod. "Then today, Crow Man, your spirit walks with ours." By nightfall, the mining company's riders stormed into Apache lands, guns drawn, torches hissing in the cold air. Elijah stood beside the tribe, rifle ready, the scent of pine and dust thick around them. He wasn't fighting for land. He wasn't fighting for pride. He was fighting for the girl who had survived what should have killed her, for the father who had nearly lost her, and for a people who had been pushed too far for too long. The battle that followed was fierce and desperate. Gunfire cracked across the cliffs, arrows whistled through the smoke, and the desert itself seemed to hold its breath. Elon regained consciousness at the height of the chaos. Still weak, she pulled herself upright, took in the sight of her father fighting, and seized the bow lying beside her. Her first arrow struck the lead miner square in the hand, sending his gun flying. Her next arrow tore through the torch he carried, plunging the battlefield into protective darkness. Her people rallied with renewed fury. Elijah fought at her side, not as an ally but as a brother in arms. And by dawn, the Galloway riders were driven out, humiliated, broken, and terrified of ever crossing Apache lands again. When the dust settled, Elon approached Elijah, leaning on her father's arm but standing tall despite her injuries. "You saved me," she said softly, voice still raspy. "And you saved my people." Elijah shook his head. "You were the one who never broke. I just cut a rope." She smiled, tired but proud. Sometimes cutting a rope is enough to change everything. The chief clasped Elijah's shoulder. "You bought a cursed cabin for 12 cents, Crow Man," he said warmly. "But what you gained is worth more than gold. You have a home among us, should you ever need it." Elijah felt something he had not felt in years: belonging. Purpose. A sense that fate had not been playing a cruel joke after all, but guiding him toward a new beginning. And so the cabin that was supposed to be his became something else, a symbol of a life unexpectedly changed, a reminder that sometimes the smallest choices lead to the greatest destinies. Elijah still rode the desert, still worked the land, still lived rough and free. But he was no longer alone in the world. When he passed by the Apache cliffs, children waved. Warriors nodded. The chief invited him to council fires. And Elon, tall as a legend, walked beside him as a friend whose life was woven with his by threads neither of them would ever break. In the vast silence of the West, where grief could echo for miles and hope could vanish in a heartbeat, Elijah had learned this truth. A man is not defined by the land he buys, but by the lives he chooses to save. And for the rest of his days, he carried that lesson like a compass in his pocket, guiding him through the wild, unruly, beautiful frontier he called home.